Alright, before we begin this episode, let me assure you it contains the following: sex, drugs, and some descriptions which people might find offensive. It gets rough at some points. I'm just warning you. Basically, don't come at me once you've listened and tell me that you're offended. I've warned you. They must come in and be covered in blood. He was just an ordinary fella. He was creative. It's got a very cult feeling. Get your makeup on and be ready for the party. There's a severed head. He liked to make things. There's a torso in a suitcase. But hey, we all love a good party. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. So, big response to the last episode, the last special, the love episode. Thank you for all of the feedback, and thank you if you got in touch and you felt connected in any way to that episode. Before we get to the story in this one, I'm just going to do a couple of shout outs and then we will get on. So hey, Paul Tuttle, thanks for getting in touch. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you. Thank you for your offer to help. I really appreciate it. Subjective Noise Podcast, thank you for your lovely and really humbling words on Twitter. I really do appreciate that. I'm getting a lot of support from other podcasts at the moment, and I really appreciate it. Lexi Bennett, thanks for the review and just for the all-round love. And finally, Gretchen Schreiner, who sent me the most beautiful email. It completely made my day, just telling me how much she loved the podcast, connected with the stories, and yeah, that was lovely to hear. Okay, are we ready to delve into the underworld of partying, the dark side of human nature, the place where fun meets sex, meets drugs, and utter destruction? Okay, let's go. Micheal Alig grew up in South Bend, Indiana. His mum describes him as an ordinary little fella. She says he was an instigator. He was a bit mischievous. So Micheal, when he was young, and you see the photos of him when he was a young child, he was just this really cute, blonde kid. His mother describes that he was a bit of an entrepreneur in his young days. He would do things like buy discount candy bars, bring them home, and then he would put a price on them, mark them up massively, and then the next day take them into school and sell them to all the other kids. He was known as Micheal the Candy Kid when he was in school. But he was a sweet child. He was popular at school. I mean, certain people thought had a little bit of strangeness about him. Some kids might have been a bit wary of Micheal, but he was definitely an individual. He was definitely doing his own thing. Now, Micheal grew up. He went through his younger years at school. He went through high school. And all the while, he was hiding a secret. And the secret was that really, well, it's what his mother calls, he was hiding the secret of his lifestyle. And what she actually means here is that Micheal was gay. And this, it really wouldn't be out in the open until Micheal went to college. It's interesting because in any documentary you see about him, when you look back at the photographs of him when he was young, he's wearing these really kind of flamboyant outfits. You know, he doesn't look like your typical 12-year-old boy at that time, which would have been the sort of mid-70s, would have really been wearing. He was making his own clothes and he was doing his own, he was just very much doing his own thing. So Micheal moves to New York to study when he was about the age of about 19. He moves to New York to study at Fordham University. He wants to get out of the small town that he lives in, and it's now that Micheal's life and the lives of so many other people are about to change dramatically. So I'll just give you a picture of what Micheal looks like, what he physically looks like at this time. So when he moves to New York, he's tall, he's blonde, he's quite attractive, but he's also quite plain looking. He's sort of a plain looking young man at this point. People who had known Micheal describe him as creative. They said he liked to make things. He liked to make costumes, and his school books, his school bags, they were always decorated with his own home designs. Now, I'm laying all of this down because this will become very important in Micheal's story. Now, in terms of personality, he was confident, but not necessarily flamboyant yet. So, Micheal gets to New York, and having grown up in a small town, New York is a big deal. This is the sort of mid to late 1980s. Before too long, he starts going out and he's having lots of fun. And he meets his first New York boyfriend, a DJ. In the documentary that I was watching, the DJ describes how Micheal and him are in a taxi on a particular night out, and as soon as the taxi stops, Micheal shouts, "Get out," and they run. They run and they skip the taxi fare. I mean, okay, it's not exactly the most criminal thing that you can do, but it's important to know that Micheal Alig is at 19 years old. He's really enjoying the party scene, and he's starting to get a little bit cocky. So he decides to quit college and become a full-time club promoter. Now, I'm imagining in the late 1980s in New York, being a club promoter must have been really glamorous. And I think of club promoters that I know in Glasgow, and they're miserable. I mean, that's a hideous job. They absolutely hate it. They just look cold all of the time. They're standing there like sort of handing out flyers, trying to get people through the door, 2-for-1 drinks or whatever. But at this time for Micheal, this must have been so exciting. And he was so intoxicated with this club scene that he just wanted to live it day and night. So some of the clubs were offering the opportunity for people to work full-time as a promoter. They would have to dress up and they would have to become the sexy face of that club and work hard to make sure that it was busy at all times. Micheal's rise to the title Party Monster happens very quickly. Described like a baby-faced Godzilla. He really cemented quickly and very, very successfully his place in the party scene. He knew everyone. He lived and breathed clubs and parties. And by this time, the kind of backwards boy from Indiana look is going. And all of the images of that time, he's wearing full-on makeup. He's usually topless. He's wearing all manner of bizarre outfits. Generally, most of the photos of this time, he's wearing hot pants. I mean, men in hot pants. No thanks. No. Men in short shorts. Yes, I can get on board. Hot pants and no thanks. Leave those to Cher. No thank you. So it's full on sex, drugs and rock and roll right now for Micheal Alig. And there's a lovely moment in one of the documentaries, I can't remember which one, but there's a lovely documentary where he brings his mum to one of the clubs that he's working for. And she's there, and it's his birthday, so they're having a big birthday night. And she's surrounded by all these half-naked men and half-naked women, and they're all drinking, and they're smoking, and they're taking drugs. And she talks about how she cannot believe that he's reached this almost celebrity-like status in this world. And she talks about how she's shocked. And she's sure this wasn't the same boy that she raised. This wasn't the same boy that she knew. She couldn't quite align the Micheal she knew and the Micheal who was in this scene at this moment. So let's introduce a man who becomes very important in Micheal's story. A man called Peter Gatien. Now, Peter owns the Limelight Club in New York. It's one of the biggest clubs at that time. Peter Gatien is running clubs all over the city. He's a businessman, first and foremost. He's ran lots of successful ventures over the years. Peter was the kind of man who would hire out a hotel suite for a week, invite lots of people to come to that hotel suite. He would bring alcohol, drugs, and it would basically just be a week of partying, a week of sex, and it would just go on for that whole entire week. And he began to invite Micheal to come to some of these parties. Peter and Micheal, they got on exceptionally well. Sometimes in the midst of these parties, they would build little forts in a hotel room, just using like this chair from here, that chair from there. They would get a sheet from the bed and they would build a little fort. The two of them would sit in it and they would just take lines of cocaine together, one after the other. Peter just thinks that Micheal Alig is amazing. He sees something in Micheal Alig that he thinks, this young guy has got something. He's got drive. He's got something burning inside of him. And I want to encourage that. So Micheal says to him, okay, let me take over one night a week. You're club and I will give you the biggest party in New York in that week. And Peter says, yes, okay. Because he really believes in Micheal. And so, the club night is born. The weekly event is called Disco 2000. This was big. This was full on Micheal Alig in his fucking element. He had the following things going on in this club night. He had people in cages dressed as drug addicted babies. He had people dressed as go-go dancing chickens. He had all manner of debauchery and nakedness and all kinds of craziness going on in these club nights. And the climax of every evening was the hot body contest. So the hot body contest involved people who were there in the club getting up on stage in front of everyone and taking their clothes off for $50. So the wilder the nights got, the more it attracted people who would get up and they would take their clothes off and they would dance for the rest of the club. And so at this point, the club started to head in a really sexual direction, as you would imagine. And, well, the footage, I have to say, is really something. Guys would happily strip their underwear off and wave their dicks about, and women would be completely naked next to them, dancing, and people would throw drinks on them, and they would just dance together. But Micheal Alig knew what he was doing here. He knew sex was what people wanted. These club nights had an air of sex that Micheal Alig was basically just putting up on stage. The club night was an absolutely huge hit. He had actually created the biggest club night in New York. And I guess just to interject here in this, I mean, it really bears no real impact on the Micheal Alig story, but my personal feeling here is I don't really have a problem with this at all. Like, I enjoy a wild club. I like a sort of crazy, sexy atmosphere. I've been to a million clubs that are just like, that are debaucherous and that are like, and I think there's a place for that in the world. I think they're okay. I don't think they should be looked on like that's a terrible thing that society holds. I think those are okay. I went to lots of clubs in Berlin, which I can assure you were not for the faint-hearted. And I remember coming back from Berlin and talking to a couple of my friends and saying, oh yes, I went to this club in Berlin and there was a live sex show and then there was this happening and that happening, and their mouths just fell open. But I think there has to be a place for that. I never want to live in a world where everything becomes so sanitized that every club is just really boring and just everything is just all about let's just have we drink and have we dance, and I think you need a bit of that. Anyway, that's just my personal feelings on it. But what I will say with the Micheal Alig story and what's going on at the time is that there is the undercurrent of something way, way darker happening with his club. So, not really satisfied with just the success of this one club night, Micheal Alig took his rising celebrity and decided that he was going to start hosting illegal parties throughout the city. So he begins what are called outlaw parties. He would bring all of his friends to a place where late night drunken parties weren't usually hosted. A McDonald's, for example. So, a McDonald's somewhere in New York, 100 drunken people, all dressed head to foot in glitter, half naked, carrying bottles of vodka. They would just descend into a place like a McDonald's and they would just start to party. They went out to the subways. They would just take over an entire load of carriages on a subway, and they would just be there partying. They'd bring music with them. They would go to late night donut stores, and they would basically just intimidate these spaces and the people in them because there was just so many of them. Their behaviour was an absolute riot. It was unbelievable. The police would try to shut it down, but the outlaw parties, they just kept popping up all over the city. Police could never just quite figure out where is the next outlaw party going to be, because Micheal Alig might decide tomorrow it's going to be in a Burger King here, and 100 people suddenly descend onto this Burger King. They're all drunk. They're all wearing ridiculous outfits, and it's just debauchery. It's just craziness. And then it goes, it disappears, and tomorrow he decides it's going to be in a car park. We're going to go to a car park. We're just going to do... So that was how it was rolling. He was just really dictating where the outlaw parties would happen. The the arrival of the police became actually the thing that they started to court. Micheal Alig loved to court the police. He thought this was the sign of a brilliant night out when the police arrived to shut down the party. So at that time, people would be filming it on we're talking the early 90s at this stage, so it's your sort of shit VHS. But there's footage of the police arriving, and Micheal Alig, he's in his element. He loves the fact that he's created these parties and that the police have come to shut them down. So this is probably a good time to mention, who are all these people that are following Micheal Alig? Well, they were called the Club Kids. That's how they get referred to in what's to come, and that's kind of what their nickname was at the time. They are a mix of men, women, gay, straight, trans, black, white, Asian, drag queens, strippers. A real mix. Former members will say it was a place to be if you felt like a freak. If you felt like an outsider, the Club Kids was where you belonged. Micheal Alig would draw in vulnerable people, and they would become a part of his gang. Micheal Alig was firmly the leader. And for me, it's culty. It's got a very cult feeling about it. All of these people were invested in this lifestyle where they just wanted to party, they wanted to dress outrageously, they wanted to take drugs, they wanted to just feel like they ruled the city. And Micheal Alig was very much the leader of that. But what they don't know is that actually their leader is a very, very dangerous man. Right, so the Club Kids are rising to fame. The outfits and the behaviour, it's spiralling out of control. In clubs, they would be wearing weird outfits that, well, they were trying to appropriate many different things. There was a lot of horror imagery. So a lot of people would be wearing absolutely next to no clothing but be covered in fake blood. Or they would work with a prop specialist who helped them make realistic looking knives which would go into their necks. The club kids, they spent their days making the most outlandish outfits they could. Sometimes they just took ordinary clothing and they would cut out the arse, the crotch, and just walk about with it all hanging out. Now, the rise of the club kids and the rise of Micheal Alig was really gaining attention, and they began to appear on TV and radio. So Micheal Alig was always the face of this. People wanted them on their chat shows slightly, I think, to ridicule them, but also to slightly get to the bottom of what was this phenomenon? Who were these fucking people? What was this? So this new exposure, all it did was bring along a whole load of new club kids. People were watching this on TV and thinking, I want to be a part of that. That looks exciting. There's a slight element of danger. It's sexy. It's dark. It's dirty. I want to be a part of it. And one of these people was a man named Angel Melendez. And in many ways, this story is actually the story of Angel Melendez. Angel had heard of the club kids and he wanted in. Now, he'd moved to New York from about 100 miles away. He didn't have much money, and so Angel started to sell drugs to fund his party lifestyle. Angel and Micheal, they quickly became friends, and before you know it, Angel is a certified club kid. He's right in there with Micheal. So Micheal's still organising his famous Disco 2000 weekly event. But a change in tone begins to happen. It starts to take, under Micheal's direction, a much more grotesque and horror themed feeling. The posters to advertise the night show Micheal standing over a dead body with a hammer in his hand, covered in dripping blood. So Micheal Alig is really driving the whole event towards the bloody, the gory, the place where horror meets sex. He would, I just find this insane, he would hire 50 people to come to a club night, and he would tell them, you must come covered in fake blood. He hired glass boxes and he would put people into them, and they would lay there in the middle of the club in these boxes for the whole night, pretending they were dead. There's, well, Should I? Oh, I don't know. Right, well, I was gonna. I've been really toying with myself about whether I say this one or not. But yeah, I think I will. One of the club kids, one of the male club kids, wore an outfit one night where he dressed up in a girl's short dress, and when you look at it you can see the pants underneath the dress. The dress is so short you can see the pants, but the pants are covered in blood, and Micheal Alig is walking around with a camera, and he says to him, "What are you dressed as tonight?" And this is horrible. The male, he turns to the camera and he says, "I'm dressed as a girl who's been fucked so hard that she's bleeding." Now, yeah, it makes me gag. I'm sorry. I was having trouble with whether or not I should include that. And I didn't include it for shock value, but I want you to know this is the kind of level that Micheal Alig has gotten to. He's pushing these club nights and these club kids down a very, very dark road. It's taken a wrong turn. It's no longer the fun sex. It's now just the utter horrible. Now, does the change in tone stop people coming? No, it doesn't. In fact, the Disco 2000 night, it just becomes bigger and bigger. And so, of course, right, in the way that anything is, if you're going to make something bigger and you're going to attract more people, it needs to become more extreme. So what next? Now, if so far you found yourself kind of struggling with any of the things that I've described that Micheal Alig has done in these club nights, get ready for what gets even fucking worse. Micheal starts bringing onto the stage at the end of each of his club nights the human pee drinkers. So he would bring guys, girls into the club. He would offer them drugs, he would offer them money, and he would convince them to come up on stage and to drink piss. Sometimes that could be they would drink the piss as someone did it live into their mouth. Sometimes he would ask them to piss into a cup and then drink it. He took it further when he then asked people to vomit into cups, and people on stage would drink that vomit. I told you it was rough. Small side note here. The STDs, or the STIs as I think they're called elsewhere, they were beginning to spread wildly around the club kids. So there was hepatitis, there was gonorrhea, there was all manner of things going on. And knowing this, they just didn't really care. Just didn't really give a fuck. Micheal Alig would just drink from anyone's glass. He would kiss every person that he could meet in the club. And there was a lot of sex happening between them all. Orgy situations were going on, and these people were just happy to keep sharing infections with each other. Now, it should probably be obvious, but if it's not, I'll just highlight it. The amount of drugs going around in the club nights and between the club kids was insane. Masses of cocaine, ecstasy, ketamine, acid, as well as non-stop alcohol. This group were basically in a place where They were never sober. It was one drink, then onto the drugs, then more drugs, then more drinks. Get your makeup on, be ready for the party, wake up the next day, drink your way through, your come down, your hangover, take more drugs, and they were in a cycle. They were just in this cycle of drink and drugs and alcohol. There's an anecdote about how Micheal, one night, he stood on the balcony of the Limelight Club and thinking he was complete, I'm Johnny Big Boss, I run this fucking town, I am the main man here. Rather than go to the toilet when he needed it, he decided he would just piss over the balcony. So he pissed from the balcony down onto the bar, and in the process he covered a young bartender in his urine, and when she became hysterical and cried, she was fired. She was told, "Don't you dare disrespect Micheal Alig. You're lucky he pissed on you." This guy's a dick. This guy is such a dick, isn't he? I mean, come on. I mean, I'll tell you later on how I feel about Micheal Alig when I come to tell you how the story actually ends with Micheal Alig. But that's unbelievable. I mean, he's going on the dick list. He's going on the you are just... Yeah, you're just... Yeah, whatever, mate. So, saying all of this, people still loved Micheal. They still loved his behaviour. He was the bad boy of the world that he had created. So, to try and live with the craziness that he has created, Micheal turns to tranquilizers to try and just once in a while get some sleep. He begins to take large amounts of ketamine. Now, he and the club kids, they thought it would be really cool to film themselves taking ketamine. It's just horrible. The footage is actually just horrible. It's them snorting ketamine and then 5 minutes later just being completely out their face in another world. If you don't know ketamine, it was it still is actually, a really popular drug in clubs. It's a horse tranquilizer, and it sends you into what gets commonly known as a K-hole, which is a sort of fuzzy and disorientating place where, well, I guess you feel a bit like you're underwater. You feel a bit like you just can't stand up. You kind of lose all feeling, all sense of what's happening in a K-hole. But it's, if you love it, you love it. If you love that feeling, you love it. Micheal decided these drugs were all well and good, but they weren't enough. He wanted harder, he wanted more. So what's next on the list? Heroin. Micheal was using heroin daily, as well as ecstasy and ketamine, and any alcohol that he could find. So who does Micheal need around him right now to help him access the drugs that he wants? Well, of course, he needs Angel. Angel, who I mentioned before. Angel had joined the club kids and was now doing quite well as a drug dealer in the clubs. But there's someone else. A man called Freeze. Another club kid who sold drugs. So Angel and Freeze. They sound like, I don't know, they sound like either Disney characters or Batman baddies. Angel and Freeze. Angel and Freeze, they help Micheal with his search for drugs, and they make access to heroin really easy for him. Of course they do. Of course they fucking do. He is their leader. Remember, I said it's like a cult. It's culty. He is leading this at this point. Something bad is about to happen to the great Micheal Alig, the great cult leader. He's at a party with his old pal, club owner, Peter Gratian. And at this point, he's been up for 3 days. He's taken way too many drugs. He's taken an incredible amount. He's drunk so much alcohol. He's been using heroin for 3 days straight. He stands up. He tries to make some rousing speech about how great he feels, how wonderful his life is, and he collapses on the floor. Now, Peter rushes to him, and Micheal only has a very faint heartbeat. Peter starts to panic. So he calls an ambulance. As soon as the ambulance is called, Peter runs around disposing of any drugs that were in the room. Micheal is rushed to hospital and his stomach is pumped. He's in hospital for days. He receives treatment, but ultimately, he's fine. Drugs had now begun to dominate the club nights. They're now getting weirder and weirder, these club nights, as if they weren't weird enough to start with. Micheal is back on his game and he's bringing it to now almost freak show level. He would put people up on stage giving blowjobs to each other. He would run competitions and pageants for people to come on stage and perform sex acts for money. So now, New York police, they decide they're going to crack down on this. They've had enough. So they start to investigate Peter Gratian and the activities that go on in his clubs. And the people involved in that scrutiny will say it was the end, really, of the lines of cocaine wherever you went. They were coming down really hard on the drug scene. So now Angel. Now he was one of the club's biggest drug dealers, and when the police came in and shut this down, that was his main income, and it left him completely unsure what to do next. And so he turns to his pal Micheal. And Micheal says, I'll help you out. Come on. Move in with me. It'll be fine. So now, Angel moves in with Micheal. But Angel has still got quite a lot of drugs hanging about. Micheal thinks it's a good idea to just start using these drugs. I mean, without asking Angel, he just thinks it's probably a good idea to just start using them. He just took them as he wanted. Angel was pissed off. And I'm not defending drug dealers in any way, I'm not. But I can understand that. If your livelihood is drug dealing and somebody just starts taking your drugs and fucking handing them out to their pals, taking them whenever they want, yeah, you're going to be pissed off. They just keep disappearing all the time. But the party boy who cannot be touched, the great Micheal Alig who cannot ever do any wrong. Angel was beginning to get really, really annoyed at this situation, and it leads to lots of arguments between them. So, just to clarify the picture of what's going on at the moment, Angel is living with Micheal. Micheal is giving away and using all of Angel's drugs, and this is causing a lot of tension. But just to complicate things, Angel and Micheal have become a couple. This just adds to the confusion of everything that's happening. Now, earlier on I mentioned there was one other drug dealer, Freeze. So we have Micheal Alig, we have Angel, and we have Freeze. And these are the three that we really need to know about. Why? Because something sinister is about to happen to one of them. In March 1997, Angel disappears. Odd. He's just gone. Gone from the scene. Lots of people around Micheal at that time will recall that they said to Angel, "Get away from Micheal. He is bad news. Just get away from him." Now, no one knows where Angel is. In the days after his disappearance, a friend of Michael's notices that Micheal has a really deep cut in the back of his neck. A massive gouge out of his flesh. He dismisses it, and he won't answer the question about where it came from. So everyone's questioning, where is Angel? Where has he gone? But the party lifestyle, it continues. Drugs, sex, it just carries on. But there's someone who just won't let the disappearance of Angel go, and that is Angel's brother Johnny. He starts to get worried. Now, Johnny isn't a part of the club kids. He's really far away from that. He lives miles away. This is not his scene at all. But he knows the scene that his brother is involved in, and he starts to get worried that he hasn't heard from Angel. And so he comes to New York and he starts to ask about. He talks to Angel's friends. No one has any idea where Angel is. He starts putting up flyers and asking anybody for any kind of information about his brother. He goes to the police and he says, "My brother Angel, yeah, I know there's lots of problems. I know he was a drug dealer. I know he's part of the club kids, but he's gone missing." The police just don't take it seriously Oh God, it must just be gutting. It must just be so fucking hard to be that person and just really want to be able to find your loved one and actually just no one's giving you any answers. So he's going out in the streets and he's showing photographs of his brother, and people are saying, oh yeah, I know him. I saw him in this club and I saw him with Micheal Alig. But can anyone pin down where he is? Well, no. So now the rumours begin. Between the club kids, there starts to be rumours that Micheal and Freeze, the other drug dealer, know more than they are saying about Angel's disappearance. Johnny goes to Micheal and he says, do you know anything about my brother's disappearance? And Micheal says, nothing. But Johnny isn't satisfied. He thinks Micheal is shifty. He says something is not right. So what were the rumours going around? The rumours were this. There were a pair of hands in a freezer, and they belonged to Angel. There was a head being kept in a wardrobe. There was so much blood, it took over 20 bottles of bleach to clean it up. But hey, these are just rumours, right? Two weeks after Angel's disappearance, it's 5 a.m. in the morning, and Micheal Alig's mother receives a phone call, and it chills her to the bone. Her son Micheal is crying down the phone. He's incoherent. He's talking in broken sentences, but she gets the following words. Angel, murder, body parts, help. So by now the club kids know that Micheal Alig has killed Angel. Did he do it alone? No. Him and Freeze, they did it together. Why? I'll come to that in a minute. How? I'll get to that. So by now it's out there. Among family and the club kids, they know. So what does Micheal do next? Well, he gets one of the other club kids named Gitsy, and they take her car and they drive out of the city. She says, I just wanted him to be sober. If he was sober, we could deal with the situation. So they drive to Denver. It takes 5 weeks to drive this distance. And Micheal says, I foolishly thought I could get to Denver with 5 bags of heroin. That was never going to be enough. On their way, they make a stop, and the stop is to Michael's old hometown. They stop to visit Michael's mum. Michael's mum comes to him, and she's seeing her son now after that phone call where he said the words murder, body parts, and help me, and she's so shocked by how skinny he is, how much the heroin has really ravaged his body, and it's really horrible hearing her talk about it at this moment. She just sort of says that all she could do was really wrap her body around his, and he says, Mum, help me. And she says, I will help you, Micheal. I'll do whatever I can. What are we going to do from here? And he says, get me heroin. So his mum, she takes him straight to the hospital. He's given methadone. This seems to settle things with him for a couple of days. But then, after this, he's straight out of town. Doesn't want to be there. Doesn't want to be with his mum. Just wants to get out of town. Just keep going on that road to Denver. I mean, slight pause for thought here, because literally by now, his mum knows, the club kids know, he has killed Angel and no one is reporting him. In fact, they're all just facilitating him. This is what's fucking insane in this. Nobody's actually going, I know the man who did this, to police. They're going, well, let's just help him. We'll just help him on his way. What is it with this guy? What is it with this fucking guy that just people feel like they don't need to ever report him for his behaviour or deal with it properly? Instead, what they'll do is they'll just help him and keep facilitating it. So onwards, Micheal and his friend go. They're driving and, well, there's a point where they can't find drugs, and so Micheal decides they're going to break into a vet's clinic in the middle of the night to try and find ketamine. Yeah, because that's a good fucking plan, you fucking idiot. Anyway, without the drugs, Micheal is miserable. Without access to constant, regular party drugs, Micheal says to his friend, we need to go back to New York. So they turn round on this car journey and they head back to New York. He just can't keep himself away from it. So the police in New York, they're taking this seriously now. They've gone from thinking, oh, it's just another club kid drug overdose, to thinking actually something serious has happened here. Now when Micheal arrives back in New York, it's big news. It's front page news. Don't forget, I told you earlier on, Micheal Alig is a celebrity at this point in New York, and his name in connection with the disappearance of a club kid, it really has the press talking. Headlines begin to appear like, clubbed to death. Alig has killed the scene. Michael's horror obsession results in death. So you probably remember I told you earlier on that one of the club poster images was Michael standing with the bloody hammer over a dead body. So this is now what begins to pop up in the press all the time. For every headline, there's an image of him standing there with a bloody hammer. But here's the thing. He's back in New York and he's still running around like he owns the place. No one really seems to be caring about what they know. Now, the police aren't able to prove anything, so Micheal is out and about, free as a bird, living his life and trying to maintain his club lifestyle. But the massive shutdown on drugs, it has had an impact. The nights, they're not so wild. And his absence from the club, it's meant a massive decline in people attending. Now, but this doesn't stop Micheal. No. Nothing can stop this ego. This doesn't stop him from attempting to be, again, the club king. He starts another club night called the Honey Trap in New York. But doesn't last long and it fails. So this is all well and good, right? It's all fine. Oh, Michael's back trying another club night. I'm asking this question. Where is Angel? What the fuck has happened to Angel? And why Why is no one arresting Micheal Alig for his part in this crime? So many people know he's responsible. What's gone wrong here? So he moves to New Jersey. He meets a new boyfriend and they move in together. His boyfriend is a heroin addict. His boyfriend says, I was in love with the mess that was Micheal. I was so attracted to just the mess that he was. So they're living together. They're taking lots of drugs. They're having lots of sex. And one night, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the police knock on the door. Micheal Alig knows at this point, it's over. Him and his boyfriend, they get rid of their drugs. They kiss, and Micheal says, I love you. Once inside the room, police arrest Micheal Alig for the murder of Angel Melendez. Freeze was also arrested at the same time in another part of the city. Within hours of being arrested, Freeze confesses everything to police. Everything about what happened, and I warn you, it's not easy going. It's not easy, but it goes like this. In Micheal Alig's flat, Freeze is in the bedroom when he hears shouting coming from the living room. It's Micheal and Angel. They're arguing loudly. Then he hears a crash. A really loud crash. He runs into the living room and he sees Angel on top of Micheal, and Micheal is screaming, "Get him off of me." Angel then says to Freeze, "Get out of the room." Michael's continuing to scream for help. Freeze returns with a hammer. And to get him away from Micheal, he hits Angel over the head with the hammer. Once, twice, and on the third time, Angel stops moving. Freeze gets up and he runs from the living room in complete shock at what he's done with the hammer. He stays outside of the living room for a few moments and then he goes back in, and this is what he sees. Micheal has a fluid and he's pouring it into Angel's lifeless body, into the mouth of Angel. Freeze says it was like a chemical smell, like bleach. Micheal asks him to find some duct tape and they start to wrap it around Angel's face. Together they carry his body into the bathroom and they put Angel's dead body into the bath. They live with Angel's body in the bath for 6 days. It's after 6 days that Micheal says to Freeze, "We need to do something about this body," or, as he calls it, "We need to do something about this terrible mess." So he says to Freeze this: "If you give me 10 bags of heroin, I'll deal with this terrible mess." And so Freeze agrees. He gives him 10 bags of heroin, and it's over to Micheal now to come up with a plan as to what to do with Angel's dead body in the bath. So what does Micheal do? He goes, he gets some sharp tools, he brings them back to the bathroom, and he begins to dismember Angel's body. He cuts off both of his legs. He puts the legs into a bin liner. He cuts off Angel's head. He puts it into a separate bag. He takes both of these bags out of the flat. He goes downstairs, he gets a taxi. He asks the taxi to drive for a while, and when he finds a dumpster far enough away from his flat, he dumps both the head and the legs of Angel. He comes back to the flat, and now the torso is lying in the bath. And so he decides to put this into a suitcase. Freeze and Micheal, they take the suitcase containing the torso, they go to the docks and they throw it into the Hudson River. After this, Micheal and Freeze, well, they just went about their daily lives. They never discussed what had actually happened. So to just jump back to where I was, this is the point where the Denver road trip happens. Do you remember I said he went on a road trip with his friend in the car? It's at this point when they've just thrown the body into the Hudson River. So to bring us just back to where we are, Michael's back in New York. And I told you, he's back. He's living a great life. He's back out on the party scene. He's having a great time in the club scene. And then police knock on his door. Why did the police knock on his door? Well, it's because the suitcase containing Angel's torso, it had washed up. And when they tested the body, they realised this was the body of the man that they had been looking for. And Micheal Alig was linked to that body. So what happens? Well, this. Micheal Alig pleads manslaughter. His defence is largely that he never intended to kill Angel, but in a sort of self-defence against Angel's rage, he killed him in that moment. And that he was on so many drugs that he doesn't actually know what happened. Freeze has also been charged with the death of Angel. Now, it's a bit of a tangled web at this point, as all these things are, which always do my head in, although I am going to do an episode later about this whole kind of tangled web and how things get spun and etc. Basically, they both should be charged with first-degree murder, but an agreement is reached where they'll only be charged with manslaughter if they agree to testify against Peter Gratian, the corrupt club owner, the man who had given Micheal Alig the chance many years ago. Police are trying really hard to bring down Peter Gratian and say that he's actually a very corrupt club owner. and that he's allowing drugs and sex and lots of illegal activity in his clubs. So they say to both Michael and Freeze, well, if you're willing to testify, we will reduce it to manslaughter. And they agree. They say, oh yeah, Peter was a terrible man. So, they get charged with manslaughter, which is a way lesser sentence, obviously, than first degree murder. Micheal Alig is sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. Freeze, he also goes to prison. I mean, that's so fucked. They've fucking killed a man with a hammer. They've taken him to a bath and dismembered his body. And they're going to prison for 10 to 20 years. Oh my God. Fuck it, they poured bleach down his throat. Are you fucking kidding me? Oh. His poor mother in this situation makes a statement that it's just horrible. She says, if life in prison becomes too unbearable for Michael, then she wants him to take his own life. And at the same time, she will take hers. And then they can both be together in heaven. Okay, sure. I ain't sure Micheal Alig's going to fucking heaven. Michael spent 17 years in prison, during which time he had many failed attempts at parole. He was found to have smuggled heroin in, and his parole was set back. A parole board were looking at his case early on, and they received letters from former club kids who told how he had manipulated and abused them, and this just set his whole parole further back. But after 17 years, Micheal Alig was made a free man. And so, kind of, ends the story of Micheal Alig. So I've known and been interested in the Micheal Alig story for years, since I very first heard it. And guess what? This is incredible. I actually saw Micheal Alig in the flesh a few months ago in a club. So I went to New York over Christmas and New Year. Well, I went for Hogmanay. So I'm in a club, and it's Alan Cummings' club. You know, like Alan Cummings, the actor. He has a sort of little club on the east side that's like kind of like meant to be one of these like sort of like cool little places. Anyway, I'd rocked up to New York with no idea where I was going for New Year's Eve, so I just picked this club. So anyway, there I am. I'm in the club, and it's quite small. It's like a long, thin bar. It kind of is more like a bar than a club. It doesn't really hold that many people. I'd say 100, 150 people at the most. So there I am, having a lovely time. I'm dancing away. And I go to the bar at one point, and then over in the corner, I hear like a massive smash of a glass. And it's one of those things, you know, like when something like that happens, everybody just kind of turns to look, see what that is. And I said to the barman who was giving me my drinks at the time, what was that? And he went, oh, well, there's a guy called Micheal Alig in tonight, and one of his friends is just absolutely wasted. Now, he said to me the name Micheal Alig like I wouldn't know who this was. Now, fair enough if you don't know who this was, but I was like, I know who this is. So then I turn round and I look over in the corner and I see this like group of people, and there's Micheal Alig. But he just literally looked like any old Joe off the street. There was nothing distinctive about him. He was wearing a very plain jumper and a pair of jeans. You know, just like there was nothing kind of like, I'm looking at him going, oh my God, that's actual Micheal Alig. I can't believe that's him in the corner. And he looked really reserved. Kind of part of me wishes now I'd gone up to him and spoken to him. I don't know what I would have said to him. Maybe I would have said to him, I think you're a massive, massive dick and you should have gone to prison for longer. That probably wouldn't have been the best thing to say, and it probably would have gone down very well. But yeah, weird that weird that I was just in that random club, and there he was in the corner, but not the Micheal Alig that I've just told you about in this story. In no way the Micheal Alig, a very, very, very different version of Micheal Alig. And it's weird because, right, there's a weird sort of power play here, and I think when I saw him, I felt that weird, immediate, oh my God, it's like seeing a celebrity, but then also remembering, well, actually, no, the guy's a murderer. The guy dismembered somebody's body in a bath. But I also think that's how Micheal Alig, I think that's how he ran his life. I think that's why he was this club king. I think that's why he was known to have committed this crime, and so many people turned a blind eye. It's that weird power thing of he's part celebrity, but let's not forget he's a killer. You know, there's that kind of like odd... Yeah, I think as a human being, he sits in an odd place. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So what's Micheal Alig up to now? Well, he is producing a musical about his story. He's got a show on YouTube. He sells his old costumes, and he's still unbelievably making a fucking incredible living out of his time as the king of the club kids. He's hosting another night in New York on the club scene. It's not particularly popular, but he's still hosting it. And I mean, there's lots of arguments here that will say, well, he served his time. He did the time for the crime. You know, he served the time, and he was a drug addict at the time and whatever, but I don't think it excuses that. I find it unbelievable that a man who decapitated another man, chopped another man's legs off, put his torso in a fucking suitcase, is literally now out and about being on TV, giving interviews, talking about it, writing books, having a fucking musical. I just find all that really insane. I find it insane that I could be standing in the same room as a man who has done that and be looking at him and thinking, I know what you've fucking done. The world knows what you have done. But yet here you are living your life just quite happily. You're just doing your thing. Yeah. Okay, so let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about Micheal Alig. That about wraps up this story. Okay, if you want to talk karaoke, first dates, bizarre photos on your phone, or dark crimes, then head over to the Facebook group, Extraordinary Stories Podcast. You'll not regret it. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. Or you can email me. It's extraordinarystoriespodcast@gmail.com. If you would like to support the podcast, you can head to Patreon. any donation to the podcast is so welcome. $1 makes all the difference to me in the world. If you are trying to find me on Patreon, I've had a lot of people coming at me going, I can't really find you on Patreon. I think you have to put in, this is very boring, admin chat. I think you have to put in Extraordinary Stories Podcast, all one word, if you want to find me on Patreon. Otherwise, I am trying to sort of be on top of that and make sure that it's not as shit to find. They've not got a very good navigation system. It's quite hard to get your way around it. Anyway, as always, thank you for getting in touch. I bloody love hearing your thoughts. These episodes that I do, they're not a dialogue between me and myself. I want these to be a community dialogue. I want us to chat about them. So let's chat. And as always, if you know a great story, if you know an extraordinary story, get in touch. Okay? Goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.